Great. Okay, recording started. Thanks all for joining. For those that I've not seen thus far, Happy New Year. I think we're still in time to say that. Maybe this is the last day to say that, but Happy New Year to everyone. This is the Hazardous Waste Discovery Show and Tell 2. We just managed to do one before Christmas as well. So I suppose even in that length of time, there's been a short gap between the two, but still enough for us to update on what we've been up to. So yes, if you could go on to the next slide, please. One thing to notice, we're using a cross-branded deck for this session and for this show and tell, and also going forward all of our documentation, just in case you've noticed anything slightly different. Right, so just an overview of what we're going to do today. Last time we did this, we ran horribly over, it was our bad, but we're going to stick to the plan. We've got like 25 minutes for us to just give you an update on what we're doing, what we've been up to, where we're going next, why we're doing some of the things we're doing, and then we've got space for Q&A at the end. By all means, if you have any questions, do fire them away at any point through here, but we've purposely left enough time at the end for any questions. If there aren't any questions, then everybody gets their time back. But also you'll find at the end of the deck an email for Alex, where if you do have any burning questions, get them through to Alex and he can distribute them through to the team. Next slide, please. That's all right. Just one thing, just to iterate on top of that, really, that this show and tell is really just high level stuff. You know, we have been very, very busy, and we could talk for hours on some of the specifics that we've been working on, and you wouldn't like us for it. But so we're not going to go into detail. This is high level, but by all means, if you do want more detail, that's an opportunity for you to ask questions. We've got time for those questions. Anything larger that you really want to understand, then we could have a separate session altogether on anything specific. But just as an overview, this session will keep things high level, but can cover anything you need. Nervously, we go to the next slide. Yes, we see ourselves as the Avengers. This is the team. Yeah, a little bit of fun post-Christmas. Next slide, please. That's more of the team. This is the proper Avengers right here. So nothing's changed here. Same team. We've certainly been leaning on our core collaborators in the past few weeks. So you know, I really see this whole collection of people you see here as the main team, but we've all been nice and busy since we've been back since the 4th of Jan. Next slide. Okay, so I just want to articulate as a reminder for those that weren't part of Show and Tell 1, this might be new, but the problem as we see it is, next slide please, Alex. So I'll give you a chance to, well, I'll read it out, but you also got a chance to read it. But we need to identify the key pain points where our users struggle to know what they need to tell us and how to carry out the tasks that we require them to do. We think this prevents users from, I'm just admitting someone, meeting their regulatory requirements and leads to an increased support burden for NRW. So this problem statement we've worked on together as a team pre-Christmas. It's something that we've had sessions on. We've looked at the scope, we've chiseled through, and we've ended up with this wording. So we've not just cobbled this together. There's some thought gone behind this. Next slide, please, Alex. So as well as what the problem is, it's a chance for us to focus what our goal is. I don't think there's anyone better to illustrate who can score a goal, which is this. This is our goal, to understand the end-to-end journey for our users and identify the areas where we can make it much simpler and easier. So yes, couldn't be simpler, but we know the work is large, but that's ultimately what we see as a problem and what our goals are. Next slide, please, Alex. I think at this point, I'm handing over to for you to find out what we've been up to in the last sprint. So first up is going to be user research, and that's Graham. Over to you, Graham.
Thank you very much, Pete. Yes, I think if we can perhaps push on to the next slide, Alex and I'll talk over these points just to give a little very brief status update. we've sort of had, as Alex said, as Pete said, 6 working days since our last show and tell, and lots of people we've been trying to contact have been off during that time. So it's good to report we've had a push at the beginning of this year. We should be speaking to 6 people so far this week, and we expect more internal and external users. It is perhaps because of Christmas been a bit more gradual, but we've had a very low, or almost no dropouts, which is quite unusual, and so it's an encouraging thing sort of going forward. It's also because the big players tend to respond first. We've been able to spend some time working out what the rest of the sample will look like and how to get to the best people and the smaller players and the medium-sized players and their influence on the whole sort of research project, which has been a good opportunity for the beginning of the year. We didn't receive any more replies to our Welsh invitation to engage, so we've moved to a sort of proactive recruitment approach with tags in Welsh on the website and reaching out through the Natural Resource Wales Field Officer system. We did a bit of research around that, and that seems to be going very well, and hopefully we'll deliver in the next couple of weeks. Users who can give us a kind of Welsh speaker sort of view of the whole process and how the website and returns and everything else works for them. And we began our accessibility audit, gathering what people will want, or what people need rather, from an accessibility point of view, how that relates to accessibility statements in the organization, and using the user hub to help us identify people who are having problems and whether that comes down to accessibility or something else. But that's sort of a new push at the beginning of this year. I think that's as much as we can say about that. We started our sort of review of the users and user sessions that we've done so far, and we started to spot patterns. So, as I said before, larger waste organisations are our main sort of contact point so far. And we thought we'd pull out just 3 little issues. They're not the most important. They're not fully resolved. They're not in any way sort of top of our list of things to do. It's just things emerge at their own pace. And this might briefly illustrate just sort of how things start to fall out of research once we start to review what we've seen as a team. I think Alex is going to take us through the next bit.
Hi everyone. Yeah, hi Graham. Thanks for that. Sorry, that was a great handover. I'm sort of presenting at the same time as trying to come off mute, so hope that was smooth. Yeah, no, I've been lucky enough to sit in on a few of the user research sessions, which has been really interesting and fantastic to hear. You know, some of the things straight from the horse's mouth. So really policing was one of the things that came out, and I think it may be because we've spoken to some of the larger players. A lot of people sort of saying that, you know, they're held to a higher standard because they're bigger and they're sort of a bigger customer for NRW and other agencies as well. So they get more attention to those sort of things. Another thing that came through is the big players said that other people don't really care about what happens with their waste as much as they do, because they know they're held to account. Other people don't really think about their waste at all, which is you know, quite an interesting insight in terms of, you know, the industry as a whole, and they're quite damning sort of review of brokers. Obviously, this isn't brokers talking so far that we've had the quotes through, but yeah, they're quite outspoken about brokers and what they're adding to the system. But yeah, that's policing. Graham, have you got anything else you wanted to add to that?
I was just going to say that if our goal is to make things easier for the end-to-end journey, understanding people who informally set rules among themselves, users, is a kind of big user picture to gather and measure against in the future.
So another thing we touched upon was progression. This was sort of people's progression within the waste industry. So the people we were speaking to, sort of, how did you end up where you are today? What sort of jobs have you done in the waste industry? And for most of the people we spoke to, they didn't particularly see a career in waste. I don't know whether it's high on people's agenda when they're at school, but it was generally they sort of started and progressed internally within the businesses. So they'd done a lot of different jobs, a lot of the time starting out and about within the site, and then gradually moving towards more office-based tasks. Another thing that was quite interesting is around the sort of return system itself was generally it ended up sticking to a certain person because they had the skills to do it. And regardless of what job or progression they moved to, they kept that as a little ticket that they will continue to do the quarterly returns, you know, for the site. So that was really interesting as well. Graham, did you have any extra there?
I suppose I would only add that it's acquired knowledge. Nobody really gets trained in this. People pick it up on the job, I think, mainly because it's a small part of what everybody does in some ways. And so, yeah, it's got perhaps a sort of the progression isn't always smooth, shall we say, potentially.
Yeah, people quoted 2 hours a quarter, so it's not the biggest problem they have to deal with. So just an afterthought that they have to do. Next sort of theme that came through was relationships. So, you know, how people know other people within the business, contacts across the different agencies, and you know, across international as well, and you know, how everyone deals with everyone else within the process. It was quite interesting to hear sort of the interrelationships across the industry.
Yeah, there was a sort of lots of complexity in the networks, and big companies have a certain amount of leverage. They can escalate things to director level. They know that in other countries, somebody doesn't have to pay that cost for this, that they have to do in Wales. They can sort of have an overview that gives them a different relation to the regulator than perhaps lots of other smaller users have.
That sort of brings us to the end of that section, unless you have anything else to add, Graham?
No, I think that's it.
So we hand over to Thomas, I believe, now.
Yes. Okay, great. And it's a race against time before my shopping arrives. Apparently it's around the corner. So yes, so what we've been doing is looking at some of the feedback that we've had via the website, because there's an option for people to leave comments, feedback. We've got a couple of graphs for you. So this first graph is the users leave their own satisfaction rating. So they say whether they're satisfied, dissatisfied. This data is from November 2020 to November 2021, so it covers 12 months. And as you can see, overwhelmingly it's dissatisfied, which you would sort of expect. It, you know, people tend not to leave feedback when they've had a good experience. They tend to do it more often when they have had a bad experience. So you normally see it skew negative by default, but this is quite significantly negative. And what we've done as well is had a look at categorizing some of the feedback that we're seeing and what kind of complaints we're getting. And the majority of the feedback is around the usability of the website, people finding it difficult to use, people finding the forms difficult to read, people finding it difficult to kind of figure out where it is that they're supposed to go. Quite a few complaints about the contents and the language that's being used being too complicated and not kind of written in plain English. It's very much legalese. It's kind of some of the complaints, and then also about finding the right thing. It's kind of the general gist of most of the complaints. So it's just been a kind of general overview of the feedback so far. What we're going to do in the next sprint is look in more detail about specific bits of feedback to see, okay, are there things that we can start to go, okay, these bits here are the problem areas, and then we can start to figure out what we might do about them. We're just going to, okay, we know where the general issue is or issues are, and now we want to get more specific in the next sprint. So that's what we've done so far. And then it's over to Adam, I believe, looking to show us the journey maps.
Yes, if we can move on to the next slide, please, Alex, that'd be great. Yeah, so from a design perspective, we have been engaging in user journey mapping workshops. So we sort of kicked this off before Christmas, and we have continued in more detail this side of the new year. The map that we're looking at is of the whole service, so the end-to-end of the service. and the individual user journeys within that. It's very high level, looking at the current state of the service. So we're not at a point where we're exploring future potential states, but how it is as is. And we are both looking at it from a user experience point of view. So their goals, the things that they're trying to achieve in their lives, and how and when they interact with the hazardous waste service. And it's highly assumption based at this point, so drawing on the team's knowledge and experience, and also just some guesswork at situations where we don't know too much, but are useful to highlight knowledge gaps within the team, within the organisation, that hopefully user research can shine some light on if that's required. So I'm going to take you into Mural now, so let's see if this works. In 1 second to load that up. Okay, so this is the mural board that we have been working into. Before Christmas, we kind of did some high-level sketches of user groups based on the size of the business. Since then, a good workshop was run by Thomas, looking into the different user roles. So we have on the left-hand side here, let me just zoom in for you, things like waste permit holders, waste carriers, waste exemption holders, waste brokers, etc. So the team did some good work looking at the high-level actions throughout the service that these different roles fulfill or do, and then some work was done to kind of group those into stages. So I'll take you through those key stages that we're looking at. So looking at the journey from users that have no experience of National Resources Wales or hazardous waste service or regulations, and going through to discovery, where they sort of not discovery, sorry, to discover, where they want to do something, so something in their life, they have their own goals or their business, which requires them to interact with National Resource Wales. Then the process of understanding or trying to figure out what it is that they need to do, and why in terms of their relationship with National Resource Wales and the hazardous waste service, so that they can achieve their goal. So the journey we are kind of working on at the moment is looking at a farmer who is potentially going to become a waste permit holder because they want to store scrap cars on their land. So each stage we're going to go through and kind of explore their expectations, their goals, the challenges they face, and the questions that they may have. The ultimate outcome of this will be we can start to kind of see the pain points within the journey that the team assume are there, and then the research hopefully can validate or challenge that. But yeah, just to keep going through these stages. So we have discover, we have understand, we have register. So at some point they need to understand that they need to register. You know, this will show to NRW what role they're taking. Are they a carrier? Are they a permit holder, site permit holder, etc. Onto the recording stage, where they're carrying out their business and they're recording the relevant information that is required, consignment notes, and eventually the information that will go into a consignee return. Then they're reporting, so this is maybe the return here in more detail, and the information required for that, who's doing that part of that stage, and then eventually onto payment, where they're paying for that return, and they are then finally maintaining that relationship. So in every 1 year or 3 years, they're updating their permits, they're providing information to NRW when need be, and the very final stage of that would be ending the relationship. So say, for instance, they close their business, they no longer need that permit. So this is the sort of end-to-end service that we're looking at, and we're digging into a very high level way, and just kind of sketching out from a user perspective the real value of trying to understand how a real human being, a real person, would come into contact with this service and then interact with it as they go along. But yeah, I'll stop sharing now, and I think I'm handing over to Thomas, who's back. She's safely away.
My shopping arrived like 10 seconds after I finished the last bit on the fridge, so all good. 10 points to Amazon for that. So this is the roadmap, or our first draft of a roadmap. I don't know if you can see this zoomed in enough. Is that okay? Yep. So what this is a living document that's intended to help us plan where we want to go and how we're going to get there. So this isn't a strict project plan. It's these are the things we think we need to do in roughly the order that we think we need to do them in order to get where we want to get to. What we would say is probably the things in the current sprint are things that we are definitely going to do because we're doing them now. Things in the one after are things that we almost definitely want to do and probably won't change very much. As you get further away, things get a bit vaguer and will change based on things that we learn. But I just wanted to really focus on mainly the user research and design bits of the roadmap. So as Adam's been talking about, we've been sketching the service stages and the journey maps, and we're going to be refining those. And then we're going to look at, okay, where do we have those gaps in our knowledge, and we'll figure out if the things that we're already planning to do around user research are enough to fill in those knowledge gaps, or if there are other things that we can do. For example, the website analysis is one of those other ways that we're doing that. And as we move along the roadmap, we get in finer and finer detail the pain points, and we build our confidence in the things that we're learning, and we build the granularity of the things that we're learning. And we'll then continue to iterate that journey map that Adam showed with more and more information from things we've learned, and that will we will then start to also test the things we're learning and our hypotheses about what's happening against that journey map and against the kind of rough idea of what we think is happening, and we can start to then play that back to users in our user research as well. So we can say, this is what we've heard. Does this track with your experience? Is something missing here? Is what we think is happening actually happening, or is it something different that's causing this? So yeah, and then the user research is going to continue. Got lots of recruitment activity going on, lots of interviews happening, and planning again for what's coming after. As we start to learn, as we start to do more and more user research, the proportion of new things we'll learn from each piece of research will go down, down, and down, and we'll start to think, okay, how can we continue our rate of learning is essentially the thing we're trying to do. Make sure that we're still learning as quickly as we were, and so we'll start to do different activities to learn new things. So we'll start to, as I said before, play back against the journey map and maybe start to do some paper prototypes, and that's when we'll start to think about moving into alpha. So yeah, and as well, we're doing things around, we map this roughly against the people that are doing them. They're not necessarily always, this isn't necessarily just product delivery stuff, but it's also just things that myself and Pete might do more of. We made a roadmap. We've been talking with DEFRA and the Environment Agency around what they're doing, doing analysis on the website. We're going to do an analysis on data we've got around the Contact Hub, and start to amalgamate the research we've got and start to create ideas and hypotheses and guesses really about what it is that we're learning, and then start to think about what's happening later on, what's going to happen next, and what we can start to conclude about what we've learned towards the end, and put that in a form that is going to be readable and useful for everybody. We've also mapped out some ideas we've got around the comms that we're going to do. So we've been doing week notes every week. We've been doing a couple of videos, and we're going to keep doing that, and we're going to keep doing blogs or blog posts as well. So we've had our first one that came out today, and I think that's on the CDPS internal thing, and it will be on the NRW one now, or shortly, if it's not already. And then obviously the show and tells that we're keeping doing. We're also thinking about running some lunch and learn sessions around more of the how we're doing things and the ways of working. If you have any ideas about things you might like to learn more about, then we're open to that. Or if you'd like to come along to them, do let us know. We'll make sure that the invite comes your way, although I think everyone who's on this list will get that invite as well. Yeah, and that's kind of it. That's the roadmap for now. This will continue to change and grow and iterate as we learn more, and we'll fill this in with the topics that we'll be talking on in Lunch and Learns and blog posts and videos and stuff. But yeah, that is me. I will stop sharing and get back to the presentation.
Thanks, Thomas. Charlotte's been kind enough to add the blog into the chat, so anyone can have a look at that. I'm just going to try to share the presentation again from where I left off. So that brings us to next steps. I'll be brief because obviously we do want to give everyone time to chat. So Graham touched on user research recruitment. It's our next step. It's what we've been doing since the beginning. We really need to reach out. It's becoming clear it's one of the biggest benefits and biggest challenges for the project is making sure that we get a decent amount of those external users coming back to us with this really valuable insights that they can give us. Obviously, Graham alluded to we're doing quite a few more interviews, and that will pick up in pace as we get a few more people committing to work with us. The user journey mapping will continue, as you've seen in the workshops, and we'll do more analysis, as Thomas has just said as well. So hopefully we'll have some more quotes and things to share with you next time. And that brings us pretty much to the end for any questions.
Don't all rush at once.
Happy to have any email questions through to me directly.
We've got a few hands up.
Okay.
I think Helith was first.
Yep.
There you go. Thank you for the update. Putting you on the spot as a team, or Alex first, or whoever wants to jump in terms of the user research to date, has there anything like really surprised you? Anything you weren't expecting people to say?
Yeah, for me, one of the things that surprised me is because we feel the pain internally about the consignee upload return system not being as slick as it could be. Other people don't seem to care much because it's only a small amount of what they do as a day job. So I think although it's not painless to them, they didn't really feel strongly. And that was quite interesting, in terms of what priorities our users will probably be different to ours. So that's quite enlightening for me, I think.
Thanks.
Katrin, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I did. I was going to ask exactly the same question as Helen, funnily enough. Great minds and all that. But no, thank you. That was all really interesting. I guess my other question is, what's the most challenging thing at this point, and is there anything that you need wider help from some of the rest of us on?
Yeah, thanks for that. The most challenging thing at the moment is making sure we're getting engagement from our users. So within the digital team, Sam and the team are putting tickets on parts of our websites to try and get engagement from people just agreeing to sign up. And the Haz Waste officers have agreed to, as part of their day job, when they're touching base with our customers and users, to start interacting that way. But it is, much like a lot of Agile, it'll be very fluid. And if we're not getting what we need to, we'll have to continue to be dynamic and think about ways of reaching out and getting that access.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
There is a Graham-shaped question that come in from Louise. How many users are you interviewing? How many do you hope to be able to speak to?
Yeah, I suppose we had a figure that we evolved from what we saw as the different kind of functions like producer, carrier, receiver, and the tasks like registration, permitting, and returns. And sort of on that kind of 80% of what you need to know comes out in the first few, perhaps somewhere in the region of you know, 18, 20 people for this whole phase, with the knowledge that sort of external users, with the knowledge that we're just going to have to talk to other people as well. We're chasing specific issues down, which will bump the number up. But, you know, in terms of a kind of base for like detailed sort of user discussions, that was our sort of first thought. But always happy to revise that as well as we work out what we don't know as we go along.
Thanks. Can I ask a follow-up to that actually?
Sure.
Just with regards to the surveys that DEFRA have been doing, are you going to use that information at some point? Will you kind of merge the two and get the best fit for Wales, or how will that work?
We are in the process of sort of understanding what they've got in terms of assets that they've done so far. We were in a DEFRA presentation today about the survey, and so we sort of got our questions ready, certainly, and also just practically who they're talking to or have been talking to in Wales, and knowing kind of who we'll be talking to, making maps of that as well. So there's plenty, I think, to be gained from understanding the things that they've done on hazardous waste, but also in the past on other waste systems. The survey is just interesting in particular, of course.
Thanks.
Any more questions? Yeah. Happy to give you your time back. Obviously, as we've got here, Alex's email's on here if you do have any further questions that spring to mind after we've disappeared. And also any feedback on the show and tell itself, if there's more you wanted to know the next time we meet in 2 weeks' time, which hopefully you've all got invites to, do let us know via Alex. Any extra bits you're keen to know, and we're happy to try and feed that into the next session. So, but yes, if there aren't any more questions, I'm happy to release you back into the wild and get your time back. But thank you all for attending, and thanks for your time. And yeah, have a good rest of the week.
Thanks all. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. Thanks very much.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.